Welcome to Paradigm Playbook, the podcast on the business of sports. With 50 plus years of experience, Steve Cook shares insights weekly, featuring top playmakers shaping the industry. Get ready to script your next play. Now, here's your host.
Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Christie Copeland. And Christie and I had an idea. Christie, why don't you tell them what our idea is for the topic of our conversation this morning?
I think you framed it a little more positively than I did, but I think your take on it was it sounded good at the time. My initial topic was business bruises that you recovered from or something like that. So I think we can talk through some things that even outside of our network, it might have sounded good at the time and then turned out to either be not good or something that could be completely recovered from.
And I want to frame this as entrepreneurs try things. And one of the qualities of an entrepreneur is that they're willing to take some risks. So there's nothing that we're going to talk about that turned out poorly that we're going to say, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. There are times when there's ways you can prep yourself for it and you can think things through better, but it doesn't always work out. Again, Christie's been on Paradigm Playbook quite a bit with me, but if you don't know Christie, give them the 30-second review of who you are.
So I'm Christie Copeland. I owned a gymnastics gym in Michigan for 19 years, and I now am a consultant for small businesses in the service industry. So work with Steve, third level consulting, swim consultant, and several other businesses just to help with marketing and overall operations consulting.
Good. So Christie and I work arm in arm with a lot of different clients and then some separately, but we run into the same thing. So we have some of the same stories, some differently. Do you want to go first or you want me to come up with one first?
So I have a pretty big one because
Okay, let's dig in big.
So like I said, I owned a gymnastics facility, but I actually had opened and launched a second facility. The employee who was there was going to buy it out. The plan was I would start it, launch it, she would be the manager, and she would buy that from me after we established it together. And she decided to move. Instead of me stepping back and taking a look at what could I do, I just panicked and I figured out a way to close it down, and I ended up not keeping it going. Ultimately, it had a little bit of a financial bit of pain, but I really should have stepped back, taken a look, and figured out how to do it with a different employee. It was a very nice small facility that we could have done. I should have reached out to someone like Steve Cook and said, what do I do, Steve? How do I keep this going? But I didn't do that.
There is some financial loss to it. That always happens. There's a personal disappointment because entrepreneurs are very aggressive, positive people. So we don't like to fail. We don't like to say, well, that didn't work. But, sometimes it happens. The bigger loss maybe is that we're disappointing some kids in that area. We're in the Children's Activity Center business. So anytime a business closes without continuing or growing, there's a little bit of disappointment for the children in the area. So opening that second facility, I'm sure with that partner seemed good at the time, and it probably was, but there weren't the provisions, or maybe it wasn't talked through with the other partner what their end game was and if they were going to stick with this. One of the things, and with each of the ideas that we come up with, I'd like to say, okay, so what could we have done in that situation that maybe would have made either the dissolution or the transition of it a little bit different?
Yeah, I completely agree, because stepping back and looking at it now, as it was pretty early on in my venture as a business owner. Looking back, if I would have had a backup plan for someone else to run it if she stepped away, which really you always should have some kind of plan B, except for your one book.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite books right now. Well, it says there's no plan B for your A game.
Okay.
But there are transition plans. Anyway, we can go on from there.
Yeah, so I really just think I should have had that. In that case, it wouldn't have felt so shocking to put me in panic mode to try to do something right away. I could have said, okay, we'll operate for a while with this new set of leaders running it. And then you can decide, do you keep it open? Do you not? That sort of thing. Because I think it would have been really successful. And so that's my disappointment, is that I feel that could have really been beneficial to that area. And like you said, we left, and now that they really don't have anything in that area still today.
And one of the things that I talk to with a lot of clients and young entrepreneurs, and a lot have partners, and I'm a big believer in co-founders. I think that's a good thing, two people doing things together, but you have to think that all the way through. And I think there's a validity for having a cross purchase agreement that says, okay, if I leave, I will sell my part of the business. And this happens more in long-term partners. If there's a disability or a death or something, and there's a cross purchase that is forced to happen and is funded through some form of insurance. So purchase agreements are a good thing. It's like looking at life insurance, though. Nobody wants to talk about life insurance. But in a business world, you should have a little bit of an exit strategy between partners. What if you leave? And if Christy and I were partners, and Christy and I are very close friends, but if Christy wants to leave the business, I don't want Christy deciding who my next partner is. There has to be an agreement in place that I get first right to buy Christy out if she's leaving. She gets first right to buy me out. We're not just selling it to a third party. You may or may not want to be partners with private equity investor. In the case of a disability or a death, I may not want to be partnered with your spouse or your ex-spouse. So there's a lot of things that have to be considered on the front side of that. I'll go one step further, and one of the things that I'm really big on right now, prior to an expansion or a sale or anything, is really knowing the value of that business. At the point where Christy say, okay, what do I do? I think the right thing at that time, rather than just trying to cut your losses, the sunk costs are in there. And I'm not suggesting you should throw more money at it, but you should know what's the value of the sunk cost that's already in there. So you have to dig a little bit deeper. And that's what we do with value builders, and just going through the thing and trying to figure it out. I'm going to go a different direction with another one. It's easy to do things. It seemed good at the time. So I'm running a family entertainment center, partial sports. I'm doing well, ready to grow. This is 15 years ago. Action sports are getting real popular, and I decide I want to open a skate park. So for skateboarders, scooter riders, and all that, I figure out the cost of adding all the ramps and rails and all the things. I do all the layouts. I get costs on how to build it and how to get it done. And we did it. We built it and we opened it. And the first day we got a lot of kids there. So there's music blaring. This is an outside skate park. And I forget what we're charging, $5 an hour or something. And the kids really liked it. And it all was going well. And then about 2 months later, the local municipality opened its own skate park. And oh my goodness, it was free. So all of my kids who loved coming and paying me $5 found out they could have just as much fun at the skate park that was free. And I had no way of solving that problem because I couldn't offer free skating. I had too much money in there. It seemed good at the time. So Christy, you can now correct me and say, okay, where was my mistake in that? It seemed good at the time.
So I actually have a very similar situation, but I did something a little bit different in mine. So when I opened my gym, I was actually running a Parks and Rec program in the municipality. And when I said, you know what, I want to open my own gym, but I need a non-compete with you. So I will pay you to be the only gymnastics program in the community in order for them to not compete against me, because it would have been the same. The pricing that they could charge for a rec program through the community would have been a third of what I had to charge as a private program, probably. And so we worked that out in advance, and that agreement still stands today, even in the sale of my business, where they are the sole gymnastics provider in that community. Obviously, another privately owned company could open, but not in the public sector as far as that goes. Maybe working with your community ahead of time to make sure they weren't planning to do the same thing could have been an option. I don't know.
Every good idea needs good vetting, and you have to find out what's going on. And I take that on myself. that was my mistake for not knowing what was happening in the community. If I had done enough outreach, maybe I would have known that. Maybe I wouldn't have done it, or I would have done it a different way, or I would have opened up something different. Now, I will say the one good thing that I did with that whole situation, and I still think it was a good idea, so I'm going to stick to that. But the one good thing I did was the equipment, the ramps and rails that I bought were manufactured in such a way that they could be moved and transported. So that made them an asset that could be resold. I recouped about 60% of my investment in that by selling the equipment afterwards. Anytime someone's thinking about adding a program, and whether you're looking for a partner, a non-compete, or just a signal that tells you, hey, now's not the right time to do that, then I think that's good. What else can or has gone wrong?
Let's talk about with respect to staffing.
Okay,
Because
good.
I think that comes up a lot. Sometimes we feel so desperate to just get another person in the door that the interview may involve just going, hello, oh good, you're breathing, you're a human. Let's see if this works out. And I think really stepping back and saying, we want the best people. You know, they're working with children. They need to be role models for children. Sometimes it is much harder once they've been hired and you realize you made that mistake to have them exit than if you just vetted, same lesson, vetting a little bit further up front. So I know from my experience, I think that is really important. I still talk to people a lot about it today. Make sure you're really vetting your potential staff. And it's better to go without than to have someone there that potentially is not a good fit.
I think we've all done that. You know, I tell a story about a person that I just thought that they were a great person. If I ever had the opportunity, I would hire that person. I think they're great. Everybody loves that person. Opportunity came up and I hired that person, and it was a miserable failure. And not because the person was wrong. It's that I didn't properly fit the person to the role. You got to get the right people in the right seats all the time. So sometimes we judge based on, what we think of a person. We really like that person. They're nice, but they're not right for that role. And it doesn't always fit that you can just move someone to a different role. I'll go into the swim world a little bit here, which is a little risky for me. It's not my real world, but just because someone's a very good swim teacher doesn't mean they'd be a perfect lifeguard. One is a nurturing role and one is a controlling role. Very different people. Now, maybe they have both skill sets, but also maybe they don't. So I've made that mistake numerous times where, yeah, it's a good person. It just doesn't fit the role. So two things I think are important. One is make sure you have the job description well written, well defined, and when you interview, it's well communicated along with your core values that are your non-negotiables. If you need outgoing people that smile and talk to the public and have no problem talking to parents, then you have to make sure you get that person. What else do you look for in pre-hiring, in kind of the plan to hire?
I was going to go one step beyond that because you still have that window of time after you've made the decision to hire to make sure your onboarding process when they're doing their training, because some of that stuff is hard to see. Some people interview great, have a great set of credentials, but then when they get in front of children or parents, you get to see it more in person and up front. So I think the pre-hire part is a little trickier, but making sure that you really have that first 30 days very well overseen by someone, that you're really watching, that all their characteristics really do align, because I think that also happens. You get to the 30, 60, 90 day mark and you're like, oh, all those signs were there and now they've been with us 3 months. What do we do? If you realize 15 to 30 days in, it's not, that's another good time to have that conversation.
I agree. Onboarding is huge. I think it's our friend Casey Del Pret who does the in-water interview. Was it Casey that brought that
I
up?
believe he does. Yeah.
He runs a swim school and he's hiring people that are going to teach, and they're going to be in the water with young children. And so that's part of his interview. Come in your swimsuit. You're going to be in the water. We're going to see how you react. And that's part of the interview. If an applicant is not comfortable with it, I think he understands maybe it's not a good fit. It's like, maybe that's telling something about the personality. I think we've all been to the point where we've hired someone that seemed good at the time, but it just didn't work out. And I'll close that and we'll go on to something else with the idea that the old adage to hire slowly and fire fast, I think is there. You don't want to keep making excuses and keep someone on board. And just because you need to let someone go doesn't mean you don't like them. This is not a personality contest. It's a fit contest and how it fits into what you're doing. What else can go wrong?
I think it's your turn.
So my turn is the shiny new toy. And I think this happens, we see it in the gymnastics world. We see it in a lot of worlds where there's something new comes out to the market. I'll give you an example. In my world, I'm in the baseball world. So we have automated batting cages. And there's a new version of that where there's a video screen up there where the pitching machine is, and you see someone doing a pitcher winding up, and then when they come around, the ball pops out of the screen. It's more like a realistic look. And this is one that my initial reaction was, that seems really cool. I think that's a good idea. I'm going to try that. And my one partner in the business said, okay, let's figure out this and figure out the cost on that addition. And are we going to have to charge more for the product because it's a more expensive tool? And the truth is, yeah, you do. And the value of the shiny toy, we determine, wears off faster than the amortization of the cost of the toy. So it doesn't really make sense. Now, if I had a clientele that was all pro bound or college bound baseball players that are willing to pay 100% more to hit in that cage, maybe it did. But our clientele was children, little league kids. And yeah, it's cool once. If they're going to come in and hit regularly, they don't want to pay that higher price. So they're going to end up going to someone else. So that one, ultimately, we decided against it and didn't do it. It is working well for some people in some places. It just didn't work for us. So that one, luckily, we recognized early on, never went down that rabbit hole. I guess every once in a while I make a good decision.
And that's a great point in the gymnastics world too. I think of two things. One, I think of from the perspective of equipment companies are always coming out with different, I'm going to call them shaped mats. We'll name them things like a cheese mat or a mailbox or an umbrella. And some of these are very expensive to purchase, right? We're talking a couple $1,000s per mat in some cases, really making sure that you have multiple uses for that same mat, especially if they're gigantic. Sometimes you also have to think, where will they be stored when we're not using them? And they're heavy. So making sure to think of that. And then also from a pro shop perspective, I know early on for the higher level gymnasts, they wear something on their hands called grips. And you could have grips in your pro shop, or you could have them order as they need them. When we had them in the pro shop, we always seemed to have the wrong size and not the size that someone needed. And so it added to our inventory where once we went to, it was on the student to have their backup pair. So they always had an extra pair. We would just order them as they needed a new backup pair. So just watching for things like that can help you from a cost management perspective. So you don't have equipment or pro shop items on hand that you end up with at the end of the year that you're like, whoa, what do I have here?
I think that's true in every activity-based business that has some type of small retail operation. It's a pro shop or a gift shop or any of those things. And sometimes we think, okay, use your grips. If you're buying grips for $10 and selling them for $20, that makes good sense. But what seemed good at the time, at the end of the year, when we're sitting on $4,000 of inventory that didn't turn, that negates a lot of the sale. It doesn't always work. And we're all in a position, everybody in the Child Activity Center that has a pro shop, if retail is not your primary business, you have to understand you're in business competing against some well-known adversaries like Amazon and Walmart. And okay, it seems good that we're going to sell workout wear in a fitness studio, but regardless, you can't buy at the price Walmart buys at. So that same fitness wear is going to be cheaper somewhere else. So I think you really have to dig into and understand the value of carrying that inventory. And inventory carried depreciates every year. They say if you're holding on to any inventory retail-wise after the second year, donate it and take a deduction because you're not going to sell it. So a lot of the retail ideas seem good at the time.
Yeah, and I know we went leotards, for example, in the gymnastics world, consignment was so much better for us than actually purchasing them and ending up with that ugly one that stays on the shelf for 3 years until you donate it or give it away.
Can you think of one more something that seemed good at the time? Or do you want me to pick one? I've got one.
Let's go with yours.
Okay, my gym's full. I have a waiting list. I'm going to expand my gym. Whether it's a fitness gym, a gymnastic gym, or a dance studio, I'm going to expand my gym. There's an open bay next to me. I can pick up another 3,000 square feet. I'm going to go from 9,000 to 12,000. I'm going to increase by 30%. It seems good at the time. I've got this waiting list. But with a waiting list, we assume that all classes are full and we're managing the business to operate at a profit all the time. By adding that space, are we going to continue? So if we don't overfill the new space, then we're no longer operating at max capacity. So my advice to gym owners is, one, determine the value of your business so you know really what you're valued at. And then let's look at what other ways can we increase revenues or increase throughput before we go to that next space. And that could be, could we expand our hours? Could we open more on weekends? Could we change our ratios of kids? Could we reallocate the space in the gym? Do we have too much equipment in the gym? Sometimes I tell people, you know how you get 10 more kids in your gym is get rid of 10 mats and you've made space in the gym. But our first inclination is, I have more kids, I need more space, I need to set up another station. And I try to tell everybody, to get to max capacity, you may only have to find one more station in the gym. You think about one more station. If a station is 8 children and you're doing 6 hours a day, that's 48 more kids a day. Without adding to the size of the gym, we can add 300 new children to that program at any given time without expanding the space. So I don't want to get any space rental people or realtors mad at me, but I just think a lot of thought has to go into before you expand that program.
I completely agree. So I went through 5 expansions myself, each time just adding a bay. Like you said, I was in a building where we could knock down a wall, add a bay. But I was very cautious before I added each. That's why we went through 5. We didn't just go from 6,000 square foot to 22,000. We had steps along the way to make sure that we stayed profitable and did what you said. So a lot of times, investigation into when schools are ending near you is really a good thing, because kids often, some of the private schools I find, get out earlier. You can offer classes earlier in the day, accommodate those students to free up some space at your prime spots. And then, like Steve was saying, get more people into your current space allotment, but definitely vetting. And what problem are you solving for, too, by adding the space? Can you fill it? Can you still be profitable? Does it expand viewing? Does it expand for your competitive program, which may not have the profit that a recreational program does? So really looking into that. But I would say the same thing, expand cautiously, because we will see people sometimes jump to double or triple in size when they really could have added a couple thousand square foot, or like you said, reconfigured the layout. Look at your layout footprint And could you move around a few pieces of equipment to do something new?
Yeah. And oftentimes there's a corner of the gym that's not really being used, or there's one beam that nobody likes because the cover's torn, or there's a lot of ways to do it. Just adding a shiny new toy or new space seems good at the time, and we tend to do that. So what I'm going to ask is any listeners that have an idea, if they want to reach out to Christy or I and give us your ideas, we will bring this topic back periodically. In a couple months, we'll do it again and say, okay, in your mind, what seemed good at the time that maybe we should have thought through a little bit more? Christy, one more time, if anybody wants to reach you, let's give them a contact way to reach you.
Let's send it right through Paradigm Playbook. We've got on the
Okay.
Paradigm Playbook website, we've got the forums. If you've got a topic that you would like to get to us, let's do it that way. We'll funnel it through the two of us.
And coming soon on that website, I'm going to put pressure on Christy. Christy manages that website, but there's going to be on there available for free. It's a 112 question checklist. If you're thinking about opening a children's activity center, here's an easy test of your readiness to do that. It's totally free, 112 questions. You ask yourself these questions, and then if you still want to do it, we're here to help you do it. So I think it's great. Christy, this is a lot of fun. We're definitely going to do this topic again. It was a great idea. This is Christy's idea, and we will definitely do it again. Everybody, thank you for listening to Paradigm Playbook, and everyone, make it a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to Paradigm Playbook. Explore more at ParadigmPlaybook.com. Want to be a playmaker? Contact StephenJCook.com. Share this episode to spread the word about sports industry opportunities. See you next week.